The penthouse keys arrived before the promotion contract did. That was the first thing Isabella Reyes realized was wrong. Not the salary increase, not the sudden executive access, not even the way people stopped talking whenever she entered certain hallways inside Nexora AI's headquarters. It was the black velvet box waiting on her desk at exactly 11:47 p.m. that made her stomach tighten before she even opened it. Inside sat a silver keycard engraved with one sentence: top floor access granted. No company logo, no signature dot, just that dot outside the glass walls of the 38th floor. Manhattan drowned beneath cold rain and neon reflections while most employees pretended to work overtime. But Isabella noticed something strange immediately after receiving the card. Nobody congratulated her. Not one person. Instead, people looked at her the way employees look at someone walking unknowingly toward disaster. Claire Holloway appeared beside her desk minutes later, like she'd been waiting nearby the entire time. Calm face, perfect posture, emotionally dead eyes. The car is downstairs, Claire said softly. Isabella frowned. What car? The CEO doesn't like waiting. Something cold moved slowly through Isabella's chest. She had only spoken to Adrian Wolfe twice since joining Nexora AI 6 months ago. Both times lasted under 3 minutes. Both times left her feeling strangely examined. Instead of respected, the company worshipped him publicly. Employees feared him privately. That contradiction had started bothering her weeks ago. The elevator ride down felt wrong. Immediately. Silence, no music, no floor numbers visible, just black mirrored walls reflecting her nervous breathing while Claire stood beside her without speaking. Where are we going? Isabella finally asked. Claire hesitated for half a second too long. The penthouse. The word itself felt heavier than it should have. Outside, a black luxury sedan waited beside the curb under pouring rain. The driver never spoke. Neither did Claire during the 20-minute drive-through Manhattan's empty midnight streets. When the car finally stopped, Isabella looked up slowly. The building wasn't corporate, it was residential. Luxury residential. 47 floors of dark glass disappearing into clouds above the city. Claire handed Isabella the silver keycard carefully, avoiding eye contact again. You should remember one thing before going upstairs. What? Claire finally looked directly at her. And for the first time all night, Isabella saw genuine fear inside someone at Nexora AI. The women who moved into that penthouse never stayed at the company much longer after. A cold silence filled the car. Rain hammered against the windows harder now. Isabella's throat tightened. What does that mean? Claire stared forward again immediately. It means, she whispered quietly, the meetings after midnight were never really meetings. Then the building doors opened automatically. And somewhere far above them, inside the clouds, the penthouse lights turned on. The rain still hadn't stopped by the time Isabella stepped into the private elevator leading toward the penthouse. The mirrored walls reflected her expression from every angle, making her look trapped long before the doors even closed. Somewhere above her, hidden behind 47 floors of luxury and silence, Adrian Wolfe was waiting. The billionaire founder employees admired publicly and feared privately. Isabella tightened her grip around the silver keycard while the elevator climbed without displaying floor numbers. That detail bothered her more than it should have. No destination, no control, just movement upward into something nobody at Nexora AI ever spoke about directly. When the doors finally opened, silence greeted her first. Not music, not conversation, silence. The penthouse lobby looked less like a home and more like a luxury executive chamber, designed by someone obsessed with power. Black marble floors, gold lighting hidden behind walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, drowning beneath rain and neon reflections. Every detail felt expensive enough to intimidate people before a single word was spoken. Isabella stepped forward cautiously. Her heels echoed softly across the marble floor, while tension slowly tightened around her chest. Then she saw him. Adrian Wolfe stood near the windows holding a glass of whiskey without turning around. His reflection appeared in the glass before his face did. Calm posture, perfect suit, stillness that somehow felt threatening. You're late, he said quietly. Isabella glanced at the clock near the wall. 12:03 a.m. Claire told me to come immediately. Adrian smiled faintly without warmth. And you listened. Something about the way he said it made her uncomfortable instantly. Not angry, not impressed. Observational. Like he was measuring obedience instead of professionalism. He finally turned toward her slowly, his expression unreadable beneath the dim gold lighting. Do you know why most employees never reach executive level at Nick? Isabella remained careful. Because they're not qualified. Adrian laughed softly under his breath. Qualifications are temporary. Loyalty is useful forever. The sentence landed harder than she expected. Adrian walked toward her slowly, while the storm outside flashed blue light across the penthouse windows. You've become very valuable to this company very quickly, Isabella. I work hard. A lot of people work hard. He stopped directly in front of her. Too close. Very few understand how power actually works. Isabella forced herself not to step backward. Adrian noticed anyway. He noticed everything. Relax, he said softly. If I wanted to intimidate you, this conversation would be happening inside the office instead. The comment sent another wave of discomfort through her stomach. Adrian moved toward the kitchen area, pouring a second glass without asking if she drank. Do you know why I built Nexora differently from other companies? Isabella shook her head carefully. Because fear creates honesty. He handed her the glass. People lie during daylight. Midnight conversations are always more truthful. Isabella accepted the drink, mostly because refusing suddenly felt dangerous. Adrian watched her carefully while taking a slow sip from his own glass. Claire seems nervous around you, Isabella said carefully. Testing him, Adrian smiled again. Claire understands how replaceable executives become once they disappoint me. There was no emotion in the sentence that frightened Isabella more than anger would have. He walked toward the windows again while Manhattan glowed beneath the storm like another world entirely. You know what employees misunderstand about billion-dollar companies? He asked quietly. They think success creates freedom. He turned slightly toward her. It doesn't. Isabella stayed silent. Adrian's voice lowered further. Success creates leverage. The people who survive near power learn that quickly. Something cold settled inside her chest. This wasn't a promotion meeting. It wasn't mentorship either. It felt psychological, controlled, like every sentence was designed to slowly reposition her emotionally without her realizing it. Adrian sat casually on the edge of the marble kitchen counter. You're wondering why employees fear this place. Isabella hesitated too long before answering. People talk, people survive, Adrian corrected calmly. That's different. Thunder shook the windows behind him. Tell me something honestly, he continued. How ambitious are you really? Isabella swallowed carefully. I want to succeed. No, Adrian said softly. You want security. Those are different things. His eyes never left hers. Security makes people compromise faster. The room suddenly felt smaller, warmer, harder to breathe inside. Adrian stepped closer again. I'm offering you something most people spend their entire lives chasing. He reached into his pocket slowly and placed another keycard beside her glass. Black this time, different from the silver one. Private residence access. Isabella stared down at it silently. The penthouse, temporary executive housing. Adrian's expression stayed calm. Reserved for employees I trust personally. There it was again. Personally. Not professionally. Personally. Isabella looked back at him carefully. Why me? Adrian's smile returned slowly. Because talented people are easier to shape before they become powerful enough to say no. Silence crushed the room after that sentence. Even the storm outside suddenly felt quieter. Isabella's heartbeat accelerated hard enough. She thought he might hear it. Adrian noticed anyway. He noticed everything. You don't need to answer tonight, he said calmly, but understand something clearly. He moved closer one final time. Nobody reaches the executive floor at Nexora without eventually belonging to someone above them. Isabella's breathing slowed. And if I refuse? Adrian stared at her silently for several seconds before answering. Then tomorrow, he said softly, you go back downstairs with everyone else. The sentence sounded polite, but the meaning underneath it felt terrifying. Isabella looked toward the rain-covered skyline outside, the penthouse windows, while pressure slowly closed around her chest from every direction. Somewhere deep inside the building beneath them, thousands of employees worked late, believing success inside Nexora was earned through intelligence and effort. But standing inside Adrian Wolfe's penthouse, at nearly 1 a.m, Isabella finally realized something horrifying. The company didn't run on talent. It ran on psychological ownership, and Adrian Wolfe had just invited her inside the system willingly. Isabella barely slept after leaving the penthouse. By the time sunrise bled through her apartment windows, Adrian Wolfe's words still echoed inside her head with disturbing clarity. Nobody reaches the executive floor at Nexora without eventually belonging to someone above them. The sentence didn't feel metaphorical anymore. It felt operational, like an actual rule hidden beneath the company's polished public image. She stood inside her bathroom staring at herself in silence while Manhattan traffic moved outside. Her reflection looked different now, more alert, less naive, like something inside her had quietly shifted overnight. By 8:12 a.m., she was back inside Nexora headquarters. Everything looked normal again. Employees carrying coffee, elevator music, artificial smiles during hallway conversations. But once you noticed fear inside a workplace, it became impossible to unsee. Isabella noticed it everywhere now, especially when Adrian Wolfe's name entered conversations. People lowered their voices instinctively. Some changed subjects immediately. Others stopped speaking entirely. It wasn't admiration controlling the company atmosphere. It was survival. Claire Holloway was already waiting near Isabella's office when she arrived. "You left early," Claire said softly. Isabella studied her carefully. "Was I supposed to stay?" Claire avoided eye contact. "That depends on what he wanted." The answer chilled her immediately. Isabella stepped closer. "What exactly happens in those meetings?" Claire's face tightened subtly, like her body reacted before her mind allowed it. "You should stop asking questions while people can still protect you." "Protect me from what?" Claire looked around the hallway carefully before lowering her voice. "Nexora rewards silence more than performance." Then she walked away before Isabella could respond. The entire interaction lasted less than 30 seconds, but it left Isabella's pulse elevated for the next hour. Around noon, a company-wide executive meeting notification appeared unexpectedly on her tablet. Mandatory attendance, executive floor access required. That detail alone made nearby employees glance toward her differently. Executive floor access wasn't normal for someone her age inside the company, especially not this quickly. Isabella stepped into the restricted elevator alone at exactly 12:30 p.m. This elevator felt different from the others inside Next. Softer lighting, no security cameras visible, fingerprint scanner beside the controls. The atmosphere itself felt secretive, like the elevator already understood what kind of conversations happened upstairs. When the doors opened, silence greeted her again. The executive floor didn't resemble the rest of the company at all. Downstairs felt corporate, efficient, busy. Upstairs felt controlled, luxurious, quiet enough to hear heels against marble floors from across the corridor. Employees here moved carefully. Nobody laughed loudly. Nobody spoke casually. The tension hiding beneath the surface felt immediate and suffocating. Isabella entered the executive conference room slowly. Most seats were already occupied by senior leadership. Expensive suits, controlled smiles, exhausted eyes, pretending not to look exhausted. Adrian Wolfe sat at the far end of the table beneath dim architectural lighting.com. Perfect. Watching everyone without appearing to move much at all. The room shifted subtly when Isabella entered. Some executives looked surprised. Others looked sympathetic. One woman near the windows immediately looked away entirely. Adrian gestured toward the empty chair beside him. "Sit here." Isabella felt every eye in the room follow her while she crossed toward him. She noticed something strange immediately after sitting down. Nobody else sat close to Adrian. The nearest executive besides Isabella was at least 3 chairs away. That wasn't accidental. The meeting started normally enough. Revenue projections, AI expansion, European acquisitions, but Isabella slowly realized something disturbing beneath the professionalism. Nobody challenged Adrian directly, ever. Executives offered suggestions carefully, like people trying not to trigger emotional landmines. Even disagreement sounded rehearsed. Fear controlled the room more effectively than authority ever could. Halfway through the meeting, Adrian interrupted the CFO mid-sentence without warning. "You're nervous today, Daniel." Silence swallowed the room instantly. Daniel forced a smile. "Just tired." Adrian leaned back slowly. Tired people make expensive mistakes. Nobody spoke. Daniel's face tightened visibly. "I'll correct the numbers before tomorrow." Adrian nodded once. "Good." Then the meeting continued as if nothing had happened. But Isabella noticed something horrifying. Daniel's hands were shaking beneath the table afterward. Adrian didn't need to yell. He didn't need to threaten people openly. He controlled the room psychologically. Everyone inside it understood careers could disappear the moment they disappointed him emotionally. Later, during a short break, Isabella walked toward the executive lounge overlooking Manhattan. That's when Ethan Cole approached her quietly. "You shouldn't sit beside him." Isabella turned sharply. Ethan glanced around carefully before lowering his voice. the closer you get to Adrian, the worse things become. Isabella studied him cautiously. You sound like Claire. Claire used to sit beside him too. The sentence froze her instantly. Ethan leaned casually against the glass windows, pretending not to care while tension remained visible in his jaw. People think Nexora's biggest weapon is technology. He continued quietly. It isn't then, what is? Ethan looked directly at her. Dependency. Silence settled heavily between them. Adrian finds people who need something badly enough, Ethan said softly. Money, security, recognition, career growth. Then he builds emotional leverage until leaving feels impossible. Isabella's stomach tightened. Why are you telling me this? Ethan hesitated. Because 6 women moved into that penthouse before you. Cold panic moved through her chest immediately. What happened to them? Ethan stared toward the city silently for several seconds before answering. 3 signed NDAs and disappeared from the industry entirely. He swallowed slowly. 1 had a breakdown. Isabella felt sick suddenly. Ethan lowered his voice even more. The other 2 still work here. Ethan looked back toward the conference room. You've already met one of them. Isabella immediately thought about Claire Holloway's emotionally empty eyes. Before she could speak again, Adrian's voice echoed from behind them calmly. Interesting conversation. Both of them turned instantly. Adrian stood near the hallway entrance, watching them with unreadable composure. Ethan stepped backward subtly. Isabella noticed immediately. Even Ethan feared him. Adrian smiled faintly. Ethan, didn't cybersecurity request your presence downstairs? Yes. Ethan left almost immediately without another word. Adrian watched him disappear before turning back toward Isabella slowly. You should be careful who influences your thinking around here. Isabella forced herself to stay calm. Maybe people wouldn't whisper if they trusted leadership more. Adrian stepped closer, unfazed. Trust is inefficient. His eyes locked onto hers. Fear scales faster. The sentence landed like ice against her skin. Adrian glanced toward the executive conference room behind them. Come upstairs again tonight, he said softly. There are things you still don't understand about this company. Isabella's heartbeat accelerated. And if I don't come? Adrian's expression never changed. Then tomorrow, he replied quietly, you'll discover how quickly this building forgets people. Isabella spent the rest of the afternoon pretending to work, while her mind replayed Ethan's warning repeatedly. 6 women moved into that penthouse before you. The sentence stayed inside her like poison slowly spreading through her thoughts. Every time she looked around Nexora's headquarters now, the building itself felt different. Less like a company, more like a machine designed to psychologically process people until they became emotionally obedient. By 7:40 p.m., most employees had already gone home. The lower floors emptied first. Then middle management disappeared quietly, but the executive floor remained active long after sunset, glowing above Manhattan like something detached from normal human life entirely. Isabella sat alone inside her office, staring at the black penthouse access card Adrian had given her the night before. She hadn't touched it all day. Somehow that made it feel even heavier. Her tablet buzzed suddenly. Unknown executive access request. 1 sentence underneath. Car downstairs, 11:30 p.m. No signature needed. She already knew who sent it. Isabella locked her screen immediately, but anxiety had already climbed into her chest. She looked around the empty office floor slowly. That's when she noticed Claire standing near the far hallway, watching her silently again. The woman moved like a ghost inside Nick's, always appearing quietly, always emotionally exhausted. Isabella stood and walked toward her before Claire could disappear this time. I need the truth. Claire's face hardened slightly. Truth doesn't help people here. Then why are you still here? The question landed harder than Isabella intended. Claire looked away immediately, toward the dark city skyline beyond the windows. Because leaving costs more than staying. Silence stretched between them. Isabella stepped closer. What happened to the women before me? Claire's breathing slowed. For several seconds she said nothing at all. Then finally, Adrian doesn't destroy people immediately. Her voice sounded emotionally hollow. That's why it's hard to explain to outsiders. Isabella remained still. Claire continued carefully. First, he studies people emotionally, their insecurities, their ambitions, their financial fears, their need for approval. She swallowed quietly. Then he starts rewarding dependency. Isabella's stomach tightened. The penthouse. Claire nodded faintly. The apartment. Executive access. Private dinners. Career acceleration. Attention. Her expression darkened. People mistake emotional control for opportunity when they're desperate enough. Isabella looked toward the black access card inside her office. Claire noticed, once you accept enough from him, she said softly, you stop feeling capable of refusing anything. The office suddenly felt colder. Did something happen to you? Isabella asked quietly. Claire laughed under her breath without humor. Everyone asks that question eventually. She looked directly at Isabella for the first time. The better question is whether anything ever stops happening after it starts. Before Isabella could respond, Claire reached inside her purse slowly and handed her a small folded paper. Don't open this near company cameras. Then she walked away immediately. Isabella waited until she reached the underground parking structure before unfolding the paper inside her car. A single address, Lower Manhattan, no explanation. Underneath it, one sentence. She survived Nexora longer than the others. Isabella almost ignored it. She should have ignored it, but by 10:15 p.m., curiosity and fear pulled her toward the address anyway. The building turned out to be an old, luxury apartment tower near the financial district. Quiet, expensive, emotionally lifeless. Apartment 1904 opened after only one knock. The woman standing inside looked around 35, elegant, beautiful. In a way exhaustion hadn't fully erased yet, but her eyes immediately unsettled Isabella. They looked permanently alert, like someone who never fully relaxed anymore. Claire sent you, the woman asked quietly. Isabella nodded cautiously. I'm Isabella, Sophia Bennett. The name meant nothing initially, until Isabella suddenly remembered it from old Nexora press articles years ago. Sophia Bennett had once been the company's youngest executive vice president. Then she vanished publicly almost overnight. Sophia motioned her inside quickly before checking the hallway twice. That detail alone terrified Isabella more than anything else so far. The apartment itself looked luxurious, but emotionally empty. No personal photos, no decorations, minimal furniture. It felt temporary, despite obviously costing millions. You met Adrian upstairs already? Sophia asked calmly. Isabella nodded again. He offered me the penthouse. Sophia closed her eyes briefly. Of course he did. Silence filled the room. What happened to you? Isabella finally asked. Sophia stared toward the city lights outside her windows for several seconds before answering. I thought he loved me professionally first. The sentence confused Isabella immediately. Sophia noticed. That's how he builds leverage, she explained quietly. Not through attraction, through exclusivity. Isabella listened carefully. He makes people feel chosen before he makes them feel trapped. Every sentence felt disturbingly believable now. Sophia walked toward the kitchen slowly. Do you know why Nexora's executive turnover stays hidden? Isabella shook her head. Because nobody leaves angry at first. Sophia poured herself water with visibly shaking hands. At first you feel special, then dependent, then isolated. Her expression darkened further. Eventually you realize your career, housing, social status, finances, and reputation all became connected to one person emotionally. Isabella's pulse accelerated. Why didn't you expose him? Sophia laughed bitterly. Expose what? She turned toward Isabella sharply. Manipulation, emotional coercion, psychological control. Her eyes filled with anger for the first time. None of it sounds criminal when billionaires do it carefully. Silence crushed the apartment afterward. Isabella suddenly understood why everyone inside Nexora stayed quiet. Adrian never needed obvious crimes. He created systems emotionally. Invisible pressure, dependency, fear, loyalty disguised as opportunity. Sophia lowered her voice carefully. The penthouse isn't the real trap. Isabella frowned slightly. Then what is? Sophia stared directly into her eyes. The moment you start believing surviving him matters more than surviving yourself. A chill ran through Isabella immediately. Her phone buzzed suddenly across the kitchen counter. Unknown number, one message. You missed tonight's meeting. Isabella froze completely. Sophia noticed the fear on her face instantly. Don't reply. Another message arrived immediately after. That disappoints me. Isabella's breathing became uneven. Then the final message appeared. Look outside. Slowly, both women turned toward the apartment windows overlooking the street below. A black luxury sedan sat parked directly beneath the building, engine running, and beside it, under the rain-soaked streetlights of Manhattan, Adrian Wolfe stood silently looking up toward Sophia's apartment window. Isabella stepped backward from the apartment window so quickly she nearly dropped her phone. Down below, Adrian Wolfe remained perfectly still beside the black sedan. rain soaking through his dark coat, while Manhattan traffic blurred around him, like another reality entirely. He wasn't calling her, he wasn't demanding anything. Somehow that made the situation worse. He wanted her to know he could find her anywhere. Sophia Bennett slowly closed the blinds with visibly trembling hands. He used to do that to me too. Isabella turned sharply. Why is he here? Sophia gave a hollow laugh. Because Adrian hates uncertainty more than rejection. The apartment suddenly felt suffocating. Isabella's pulse hammered violently while another message appeared on her screen. Come downstairs. No anger, no threats, just expectation. Sophia looked genuinely afraid now. Don't go alone. Isabella stared at the glowing message. If I ignore him, then he escalates. Sophia crossed her arms tightly, almost like she was physically cold. Adrian doesn't believe people should leave conversations unfinished, especially people he considers emotionally valuable. Valuable, the same word Adrian used during their first midnight meeting. Isabella suddenly realized something horrifying. Adrian spoke about people the same way corporations spoke about assets, carefully, strategically, emotionlessly. Another vibration hit her phone. 5 minutes. Isabella looked back toward the blinds covering the windows. Her instincts screamed at her not to go downstairs, but another fear had already started growing inside her too. What happens if I refuse him publicly? Nexora controlled nearly every major AI contract in New York. Adrian Wolfe practically owned entire career paths for people inside the industry. One accusation from him could destroy reputations before facts even mattered. Sophia noticed the conflict inside Isabella immediately. That's how it starts, she whispered quietly. The fear. Isabella looked at her. You still sound scared of him. Sophia's eyes darkened instantly, because people like Adrian never stop controlling rooms after they leave them. Silence settled heavily between them. Then Isabella made the mistake fear always pushes people toward. She grabbed her coat. Sophia stepped forward sharply. Isabella, I just need to end this clearly. Sophia looked devastated hearing that sentence. That's exactly what I told myself 5 years ago. The elevator ride downstairs felt endless. Isabella's reflection inside the mirrored walls looked pale now, emotionally cornered long before she even reached the lobby. When the doors opened, Adrian was already waiting inside the empty marble entrance like he knew the exact second she'd arrive. The storm outside painted cold blue reflections across his face, while security staff pretended not to watch from a distance. Adrian studied her calmly. You disappeared. Isabella forced herself to stay composed. I'm not an employee 24 hours a day. Adrian smiled faintly. Everyone at Nexora is the answer, chilled her instantly. Adrian opened the sedan door for her himself. Drive with me. I'd rather talk here. No, Adrian replied softly. You wouldn't. The statement wasn't loud, but it carried the kind of quiet authority people obey before realizing they're obeying it. Isabella hated herself slightly for getting inside the car anyway. The city lights blurred across rain-covered windows while the driver moved silently through Manhattan traffic. Adrian sat beside her calmly, one arm resting casually against the leather seat, like none of this was unusual. Sophia still blames me for her choices, he asked quietly. Isabella looked toward him carefully. You destroyed her. Adrian shook his head once. I accelerated her ambitions faster than she could emotionally handle. The emotional detachment in his voice made her stomach twist. That's how you justify this. Adrian's expression never changed. You think billion-dollar companies are built by emotionally healthy people. Silence followed. Adrian continued watching the city outside, while speaking softly. Everyone wants power, until power starts asking things from them personally. Isabella felt trapped inside the conversation already. Every answer seemed to lead deeper into his psychological framing, instead of away from it. You manipulate people. Adrian looked at her directly now. Of course I do. The honesty stunned her silent. Every corporation manipulates people. I'm simply more honest about it, privately. Isabella stared at him. Adrian leaned slightly closer. Employees trade emotional stability for financial survival every day. His voice remained calm. I just removed the illusion that it's voluntary. The car finally stopped beneath another luxury skyscraper in Midtown. Private rooftop restaurant, empty except for staff, clearly instructed not to look directly at them. Adrian guided her toward a secluded table overlooking Manhattan's storm-covered skyline. Isabella noticed something disturbing immediately. Nobody asked for reservations. Nobody checked names. The entire environment had already been arranged before they arrived. Adrian sat across from her while candlelight flickered between them. Do you know why people fail inside companies like Nexora? He asked softly. Isabella remained guarded. Because they're afraid. Adrian shook his head. Because they want morality and success to coexist comfortably. He took a slow sip of whiskey. That fantasy disappears near real power. Isabella's chest tightened again. You think power excuses everything? Adrian smiled slightly. No. I think power reveals everything. Thunder echoed outside while tension slowly consumed the silence between them. Adrian suddenly placed a thin black folder onto the table. Isabella frowned. What is this? Your future. She opened it cautiously. Inside sat legal ownership documents for the Penthouse, not temporary housing. Ownership. Multi-million-dollar ownership. Isabella looked up immediately. Adrian watched her carefully. You're offering me an apartment. I'm offering you permanence. Her stomach dropped. Why? Adrian leaned back slowly. Because emotionally intelligent employees are harder to replace. Isabella closed the folder immediately. I'm not sleeping with you for career advancement. Adrian's expression remained calm. Too calm. Interesting, he said quietly. I never said anything sexual. Isabella froze. Adrian leaned forward slightly. Notice how quickly your mind assumed intimacy equals corruption. The psychological trap closed instantly around her. He reframed everything faster than she could defend herself emotionally. That's not what this is, she said carefully. Adrian smiled faintly again. Then, why are you shaking? Isabella realized her hands were trembling only after he said it. Adrian lowered his voice further. You know what makes you different from the others. She said nothing. You still believe refusing me would protect your identity. His eyes locked onto hers, completely now. But power doesn't erase identities immediately. Isabella, he paused. It convinces people to surrender them willingly. Silence crushed the rooftop restaurant afterward. Manhattan glowed beneath the storm outside while pressure slowly consumed the space between them. Then Adrian reached into his pocket one final time and slid another item across the table toward her. A company contract. Executive partnership agreement. Isabella's eyes widened as she read the numbers attached to it. Millions, equity, permanent executive, authority inside Nexora AI. Adrian watched her reaction carefully before speaking again. Sign it, he whispered softly, and nobody downstairs will ever have power over you again. Isabella stared at the contract while her heartbeat slowly lost rhythm inside her chest. Because for the first time since joining Nexora, she wasn't just afraid of Adrian Wolfe anymore. She was afraid part of her wanted to say yes. Isabella couldn't stop staring at the contract. The numbers alone felt unreal. Executive equity, permanent housing ownership, direct partnership access beneath Adrian Wolfe himself. Everything ambitious employees spent entire careers chasing sat inches away from her fingertips. Beneath the dim rooftop lighting, and somehow that terrified her more than Adrian ever had, because deep down, she finally understood the real danger inside Nick. Adrian didn't trap people using force, he trapped them using desire. The silence between them stretched painfully while rain hammered against the restaurant windows overlooking Manhattan. Adrian remained calm across the table, studying her expression like someone watching a psychological experiment unfold in real time. Most people decide faster, he said quietly. Isabella looked up slowly. That should concern you. Adrian smiled faintly. It usually does. She pushed the contract slightly away from herself. What exactly happens if I sign this? Adrian leaned back comfortably. Your career accelerates beyond everyone around you. And privately, his eyes stayed locked onto hers. Privately, you stop pretending. Success inside this industry comes without emotional cost. Isabella's stomach tightened again. Every answer from him sounded calculated to dismantle morality, piece by piece, without sounding openly monstrous. That was what made him dangerous. He never sounded insane. He sounded rational. You think everyone has a price, she said carefully. Adrian took another sip of whiskey before responding. No. His voice lowered slightly. I think survival eventually makes people negotiate with themselves, emotionally. The sentence hit harder than she expected because part of her already knew it was true. Adrian watched the realization move across her face. You're thinking about your future downstairs. Isabella stayed silent. You're wondering how long integrity matters once everyone more powerful than you abandons it first. Her heartbeat accelerated. Stop acting like you understand me. Adrian's expression darkened slightly for the first time all night. I understand ambitious people perfectly. Silence swallowed the rooftop again. Then Adrian reached toward the contract and tapped one specific page lightly. Page 14. Isabella hesitated before opening it slowly. Her pulse immediately dropped. Confidentiality clauses, behavioral agreements, emotional misconduct liability waivers, social interaction restrictions, isolation protocols regarding executive communication. It didn't look like employment paperwork anymore. It looked psychological. "What is this?" Adrian answered calmly. "Protection." Isabella looked horrified. "This is ownership." Adrian didn't deny it. That terrified her most. Power always looks abusive to people without it. Isabella stood up immediately from the table. "I'm done." Several nearby staff members subtly looked away instantly. Adrian stayed seated calmly. "Sit down." No, his voice remained quiet. "You're making an emotional decision inside a strategic environment." Isabella grabbed her coat. "You're insane." Adrian finally stood, not angry, worse, disappointed. "You think leaving this table changes what you've already seen?" The question froze her movement slightly. Adrian stepped closer slowly, while thunder flashed across the windows behind him. "You already understand how Nexora works now." His voice lowered further. "That knowledge changes people permanently." Isabella forced herself toward the exit anyway. Adrian didn't physically stop her. He didn't need to. His voice followed her across the empty restaurant instead. "If you walk away tonight," he said calmly, "you walk away alone." Isabella stopped near the elevator doors, despite herself. Adrian approached slowly. "Do you think employees downstairs will protect you?" Silence. "Do you think HR investigates executives worth $40 billion honestly?" Another silence. Adrian stopped several feet away from her beneath the cold rooftop lighting. "You know what happens to people who emotionally reject systems they can't expose." Isabella's breathing became uneven. Adrian answered his own question softly. "The system survives. They don't." The elevator doors opened behind her. Escape sat inches away, but fear had already infected her thoughts completely now. Fear of unemployment, fear of retaliation, fear of becoming invisible professionally after challenging someone untouchable publicly. Adrian saw all of it happening inside her face. "That's the moment," he whispered quietly. "The moment people realize survival has a price." Isabella stepped backward into the elevator. Finally, Adrian remained outside the doors watching her silently. "Last chance," he said softly. "Sign the contract. Stay upstairs. Become powerful enough. Nobody can ever corner you again." The doors slowly began closing between them, and for one horrifying second, Isabella almost stepped back out. That scared her more than Adrian ever could. The elevator descended rapidly through the tower while panic slowly overwhelmed her chest. By the time she reached the street-level lobby, her hands were shaking uncontrollably. She walked through rain for nearly 20 minutes without direction, Manhattan lights blurring around her while Adrian's words repeated endlessly inside her head. "Survival has a price. Power reveals everything. Nobody downstairs will protect you." Eventually, she found herself standing outside Nexora headquarters again, sometime after 2 a.m. The building towered above the city like a monument to emotional control itself. Thousands of employees would return there in a few hours, believing hard work still guaranteed safety. Isabella knew better now. Her phone buzzed suddenly. New company email. Subject: Executive Restructuring Notice. Isabella opened it slowly beneath the rain-soaked streetlights. Her access level had already been downgraded. Executive privileges revoked. Department reassignment pending review. She stared at the screen in disbelief. Adrian had moved faster than she imagined possible. Another notification arrived immediately after. Her company, apartment request, denied, performance evaluation. Under internal investigation. Meeting scheduled with compliance officers tomorrow morning. Isabella felt physically sick. He was destroying her professionally, without raising his voice once. A black sedan slowly pulled beside the sidewalk near her. The rear window lowered silently. Claire Holloway sat inside, staring at her with emotionally exhausted eyes. "Get in," Claire said quietly. Isabella hesitated. "Why?" Claire looked toward Nexora's glowing tower, sadly. "Because once Adrian decides, someone belongs downstairs again." Her voice cracked slightly for the first time. "The fall happens very fast." Rain poured harder around the city, while Isabella stood frozen between the luxury sedan and the billion-dollar building behind her. One path meant surrendering herself emotionally to survive inside Next. The other meant fighting a system powerful enough to erase people quietly. And standing there alone beneath the storm-covered Manhattan skyline, Isabella finally realized the most terrifying truth of all. Adrian Wolfe was right about one thing. The company never wanted talented employees. It wanted emotionally dependent ones.